Hey, Marcia here. Today we're discussing why personalized nutrition is so important when it comes to our bones. Two people can eat the exact same diet, take the exact same supplements, and end up with completely different bones. One is building bone strength and the other keeps losing it. So today we're going to talk about why this might be and what you can actually do about it. And I'm really excited about our special guest, Ashley Koff. Ashley is a registered dietitian and founder of the Better Nutrition Program and best-selling author of Your Best Shot. For more than 25 years, Ashley has been at the forefront of translating cutting-edge nutrition science into clear, practical strategies, and she has a gift for cutting through the noise. So today in this episode, you'll learn how digestion and gut health determine whether nutrients actually reach your bones and easy action steps you can put to use right away, the importance of blood sugar and how this affects your bones, and what you can do about it. And what is the deal on GLP-1s and the newer, even more powerful weight loss medications? What do they mean for your bones? And really what every person needs to know before starting them. So this is full of lots of great information. Stay tuned. Welcome, Ashley. So happy to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you, Margie. It's so fun. I feel like this has been several months in the making since we saw each other in New York. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I loved your talk, and I feel I just absolutely love what you talk about, personalized nutrition. And I couldn't agree more. Bone health is absolutely not one size fits all. And you want to explain that because a lot of people, okay, get your calcium, vitamin D, and this and that, and that's it. Like a pill for an ill and just calcium, vitamin D, and you're done. And as we know, it's so much more, and you could talk probably for 10 hours on this, but the short answer to that.
Sure. Boy, have we really screwed up, so much in nutrition by making it seem one size fits all with, recommendations for amounts and quantity, so I love that you're calling that out. I have always worked in a personalized space because as someone who early on battled what I learned was my weight health and my digestion, I was always, trying to follow everybody else's plan to lose weight, and it never worked for me. And then I was like, wait a minute. What ultimately helped me figure out what worked for me, and this is with the link into bone health, was actually that my digestion was the problem. So number one, if your digestion is not optimal, you cannot have optimal bone health. So we know today there's even something called a gut-bone axis, and we can look at what is happening in our gut and understand that not only does the gut make sure that the body actually gets the resources that build bone or the resources that turn off or maintain an appropriate level of bone breakdown, bone resorption, but actually there are things like short chain fatty acids and others that activate hormones, and we talk about this a little bit later, that then come over and impact, our bone health. So gut health, I would say, is absolutely number one. What's often missed in the gut health conversation is that hydration is a part of that. So hydration is a mechanism for having water escort nutrients to different places in the body, to inside the cells or to be in the bloodstream, et cetera. And if our hydration is suboptimal, then we're not, just like if our digestion is suboptimal, we're not absorbing nutrients. So what makes it personal is there's nothing more personal than our guts, right? So I think that's number one on that part. The other part about personalization is that we often miss, I think we exist in a world that talks about supplements in one place and food and beverages in another. And I like to use the term total nutrition. So when I'm talking about personalizing your nutrition, we really have to take a look at every input that the body is getting in, your foods, your supplements, and even your medications, or their impact on that. When we look at your total nutrition, we can sometimes see that maybe what you're doing in the supplement space is actually overwhelming or creating an imbalance, an excess or an insufficiency of other nutrients from a food standpoint, and vice versa. So it really needs to be personalized down to what supplements you're taking, what medications are you taking. The third one that I think is probably the most important of all of this is, in order for us to succeed at it, we also, from a bone health standpoint, we don't start looking at bone health at age 65. It's not like like a retirement party, right? You talk about this all the time. They make this claim now about like age 35 or 30, it's like that's when we stop building bone. But the reality is that for most of us, and I'm speaking mostly to women right now, but I think it's fair to say for boys and men, especially in the last 20 years, most of us did not achieve peak bone building. And, I'll use myself as an example. I was a dieter. I later drank alcohol. I was on medications, antibiotics, skin medications, oral contraceptives. All of that changed my bone building potential and what I achieved by 30. So it has to be personal because we have to look back at your story and say, like, maybe there were years where you couldn't or you chose not to eat certain things, or maybe you were extremely active. I work with a lot of performance people who were active either as entertainers or athletes early on. So anyway, I would say those are the three big reasons that this has to be a personal assessment and a personalized plan when it comes to your bones.
Yeah, I just love that. I mean, a couple interesting things, like, people don't realize, they get a bone density, and that's why I'm just make such a big deal that we have to understand the why, because
Yeah.
it may just be when they get their first bone density, we get 85 to 90% of our bone, women by age 18 and men by 20. So what we do when we're younger, it's sort of like a bank that we
Yeah.
keep building, and people don't realize that every age, it's not just like you said, it's not 65 and older we deal with this. It's like everybody needs to deal with bone health and the nutrition. But I think what you said is so important because people, are eating, they're spending money, they're getting their supplements, they're eating really good food, or they're making sure they're getting enough calcium, magnesium. But yet, what's missing, and not everybody assesses this, is the digestion. I couldn't agree more. So, what do you find are the biggest? Well, what do you find are like the biggest issues? Is it the stomach acid? Is it like what have you
Yeah.
found? And what
Yeah.
have you found really makes it? Is there any easy things that people,
Yeah. I
use?
love the way you kind of like rolled your eyes with easy because like none of this is easy, but what
Yeah.
is missing in this is not assessing our gut. And so what I do want to be clear about is this is not go get a poop test done, or this is not, just are you pooping or are you not? For someone like myself as a practitioner, and what I wrote about in my book is I give you a comprehensive digestive assessment. They are questions. And yes, they also ask you to do things like smell your poop or smell yourself or, look at certain things. But we really have to understand what's going on. So our poop is going to be a core component of that. But so are signals like things going the wrong direction. So reflux, or us bloating out, things not moving at all, or after we're eating, bloating. Sometimes it's things like energy highs and lows, or our fullness, like not feeling full despite having eaten. Sometimes it's being hungry despite having eaten, and sort of recognizing that something, the signals aren't there. And then it's even things like our hair, skin, and nails. It's under our eyes, kind of like our appearance. We can look at, from that standpoint and do that assessment. When we do that, we start to be able to look at, I love that you asked like which part, because it's going to be different. Motility is going to be a factor based on, did I travel this week? What's my exercise look like? What's my stress level, my sleep level? And there are some genetic components and there are also nutrient components. There could also be things like you're not breaking down what you're taking in. So maybe you're like everybody out there, like hearing like more protein, more protein, more protein. And I love that because we actually need protein and certain amino acids to build the collagen, the bone matrix, the scaffold, right? That gets mineralized. So if we don't have those coming in, it's an issue. So I have people who are taking collagen, they're adding glutamine, they're taking creatine, they're eating protein in a variety of forms and maybe amounts. And if the body isn't breaking it down, it's not getting those usable building blocks, those amino acids. So breakdown might be I'm not chewing. Breakdown might be I'm stressed out. Breakdown might be I'm not actually producing or having available enough digestive enzymes, which are kind of like the forks and knives, in our digestive system to break things down. It could also be that stomach acid is not working appropriately. Either it's too high, it's too low, or it's just not coming in at the right time. And then the final piece, like I was talking about with hydration, is that we may not be absorbing what it is that we're taking in. And so I like to come back to from a nutrition standpoint. Now, remember, I'm an RD, which the kids say is a backwards doctor. That's how they figured out what my career is like instead of DR and RD. So I look at this totally different. I'm going to assess the operations of your body, and then I'm going to look at the resources that it's getting. And I'm going to say, are the resources enabling it to operate optimally? Well, one of the things about resources, we tend to talk about healthy foods. There really are no healthy foods because we shouldn't give credit to a food outside of the body. The body only gives us credit when the calcium reaches the bone. What do I mean by that? If we don't have vitamin D, vitamin K, silica, boron, magnesium in optimal amounts in the body, that calcium isn't going to get and stay in the bone. It might even break down or not get there and become arterial plaque. So when we think about when we think about bone health and why gut health really here, we want to make sure that we're not trying to like go eat healthy bone foods and not pay attention to are they getting where they're supposed to go. So the easy part is actually doing the assessment. The more challenging part is a little bit of understanding what could be throwing off or which segment, we need to address, or maybe it's several of them. It could be motility and breakdown. But one of the reasons I wrote a playbook instead of like the upfront of my book is like chat stories, let's understand the why. But the whole back half and the QR code that gives you access to my community and myself is all a playbook for how to do this. So I don't want you to hear that you have a motility issue like constipation and then turn around and say, I'm going to take more fiber. In fact, I'm always like, don't start with fiber, right? So then we get in there. There could be something easy, an easy tweak, but we have to identify it. And that's where it becomes a little bit more, we have to decode it and become a little bit better at sleuthing that as well.
You wanna just show your book so everybody knows
Oh,
what you're
yeah,
talking about?
totally. It's right here. Yeah. I've like
You
never
did
leave
it
without it.
this year in '26 as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
In January. Yeah. I'm actually working on the follow-up, which is Your Kid's Best Shot. And it's a book for raising weight healthy kids in the GLP-1 era. And this is not about GLP-1 agonists. I want to be clear there. It is about the fact that weight health, which is bone, muscle, fat, and water, the location of them, the type of them, the amount of them, those are all signals. So I am not here. What I want you to do is break up with there is no signal of value from your total weight number. But if you start to notice you put on a little bit of belly weight, or if you get your scan and you see that you've lost some bone, that is actually a signal for us that we actually need to look at how the body is operating. And that's the system. And it includes looking at our weight health hormones, which are your, GLP-1, GIP, even CCK, because we were just talking about acid on that part, stomach acid.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's so interesting because, as I said, this is such a missing piece, but there are some very low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of things that do require more assessment and working with someone, but there are some lower hanging fruit, like you just said, hydration. So what's
Yeah.
your recommendation? Because hydration, I cannot get over, especially how my husband included. Now, he was
Yeah.
a physician and really busy, and especially when they were wearing masks all day.
Yes.
He was not drinking, so I make him go in with a water bottle. And
Yeah.
what are your what's your
So
recommendation?
intake of water definitely matters, but we are not hydrated when we take in water. So I want to be really clear about that. Hydration does not mean water quantity intake. So especially those of you that are maybe trying to drink half of your body weight or more in ounces, or like thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't drink any water and now I got to slam a whole, liter at one point. What we really want to think about is that water needs to go in and be absorbed. It has all of these different places that it wants to be and needs to be. So it needs to take nutrients into the cells. It needs to hang out in the bloodstream. It needs to partner with fiber and be part of elimination. It, of course, needs to be part of our urine. So there are all of these different places. And that's why, and I debunk all these myths in the book, just looking at the color of your urine does not tell you if you are hydrated. It might tell you if you are dehydrated, absolutely, but it doesn't tell you if you're hydrated. So what I have this fun little experiment. The whole book is experiments, but in this one, I have you drink 8 ounces of water and see how long it is until you have to pee. So that actually tells me if you have to pee sooner than 2 hours, it's going to tell me that you're more of a hose than you are a sponge. So a lot of us are drinking water and we're peeing it right out. Now, one of the reasons that we're doing that is because we're also consuming dehydrators. We might be really stressed in the moment, and that could be a positive thing. We could have just worked out, or like your husband, it might be I'm working, I'm performing a surgery, I'm doing whatever, like all of these different things. But it could also be that I'm taking in caffeine, alcohol, sugar, things that are more likely to dehydrate. Those are not problematic in and of themselves. It's just that it means they're making us pee out our water a little bit, more on that part. So we actually look at, when we have your results, we look at how do we optimize hydrators and how do we move our water intake away from dehydrators. And I do have something very simple here in case that sounds complicated. What I recommend for everyone is that we really take a race car approach to thinking about our body. And what we do with that is we recognize that our body runs best when it has an optimal amount of resources, just like a race car. It's just finished a pit stop and it's all tuned up and it goes and does a couple laps and then it comes back. So throughout your day, if you're pit stopping regularly, and I use the about every 3 hours as that time period, in that about every 3 hours, try to consume 8 to 12 ounces of water. The idea there is every time you're taking in calories, you should be taking in water because your body is meant to escort those nutrients where they're supposed to go and to also encourage motility and, to encourage the body to eliminate toxins, et cetera. So if we can get into an approach where we're regularly consuming water, we might do very well. Now, somebody's going to say, Ashley, if I did that, maybe I'm only at like 32 or 48 ounces of water. Aren't I under in my water intake? Potentially, but not if that water is being consumed when you're not consuming dehydrators. Everything else can be a bonus, on that part. So as an example, if you have a sweet treat in the middle of the afternoon or in the morning when you have your coffee, don't count your ounces of water there. Give it an hour or give it a 2 hours and have your 8 to 10 or your 8 to 12 ounces of water and try to have it be retained. Now, the other part of it is I do think it's, even from a food standpoint, I think it's a little bit difficult to meet all of our electrolyte needs, in particular potassium. So we have potassium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, and calcium. And sodium, we do pretty well with getting in, and most of us actually are really good at getting in calcium. It just is on the magnesium and the potassium side, we tend to be a little bit lower. So I will maybe align in favor with an electrolyte supplement. You can make your own at home or you can buy one. I don't want it to have sweeteners in it. I kind of like the plain one. If you need the sweetener for your flavor, like, okay, but let's not do a lot of sweeteners and let's not do artificial sweeteners. And if you can get that in once a day, maybe at a time where you're going to have peak dehydration. Okay, I drink the coffee, or okay, I'm having the alcohol, or okay, I just did a workout. That electrolyte there, that add may help you just do a better job of absorbing the water that you're consuming at that time.
I know some of the, some of the electrolytes have too much sodium in it. Is there certain things we should
Great
look
point.
for in
Yeah.
an electrolyte so that we don't,
Yeah.
some of the common ones do have like very high
Very
sodium.
high sodium. So what's interesting is if you are someone who doesn't consume sodium, I have a lot of people who do not, like, they're not having packaged foods or they're trying not to, so maybe not when they travel, but when they're at home, or they also, are somebody who is not consuming, they're not adding salt. Maybe they've just like had in their head, I don't want to get this in. Then they actually could be okay with 1,000 milligrams, 1 gram in a packet. When you start to get above that and you get to 2 and 3 packets in a day, I agree with you. So personalize your electrolyte supplement. And I go through that in my book and certainly in the resources we have in the community, they're all free, where I really want you to be able to lean into, remember, it's that total nutrition concept. So as an example, if you get more calcium from your food sources, and that could be non-dairy, plenty of people get a lot of calcium from non-dairy sources. If you're getting your calcium in there, you might not need additional calcium in your electrolyte, or maybe you take the calcium supplement, right? So that's where it's smart to have somebody, or at least yourself, looking at your total nutrient intake. One of the things you can do, I have a private HIPAA compliant AI that I created because it's called the Weight Health Nutritionist, because I was worried that if I didn't AI my stuff, other people would be, and it was true. People were out there in like Claude and Gemini and everything else. But what I realized is whether you're using mine or you're using your own, you can actually stick everything that you consume in a day and go in and ask it to give you your amounts, your total nutrition amounts. And that's actually a really great place to do. I'm not going to say that that means the output is going to be correct, right? Because you still have to make sure you train the AI to get the right information, but it could give you guidance and you might pick up on something. Like, as an example, one of my clients just did not realize, like with what they were getting in. They were having celery and this other stuff, how much sodium they were already getting in the day. And it really helped them, to be able to look at that. So I think some of those are great ways for us to be able to be a little bit more transparent or visible with our total nutrition intake.
Wow, that's great. How do they get to yours? That sounds.
The Weight Health Nutritionist, everything that I have is going to be available either through the community that you access with my book or through the Bender Nutrition Program. Yeah.
Oh, we'll have the links in the show notes. That's
Thanks.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so good. So one question that people always ask, and there's conflicting information, is in terms of, you're saying get the water so that they can help with the nutrients.
Yeah.
Certain people are here, no, 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 I don't wanna dilute the stomach acid. Can you tell us
Right.
really legitimate?
Garbage.
Okay.
Total garbage. You're not
Exactly.
diluting your stomach. Look, there is a lot that we are doing to mess with our stomach acid, and there's the natural process of aging that reduces the production of stomach acid. We are older cars as we get older, and so we kind of have to do all the tune-ups and all the work just to make sure that we're operating at an optimal level for our age on that part. Additionally, when they go through periods where we suppress that stomach acid or where things are going on that suppress that stomach acid, the water is not going to be the problem. And without it, I'm even experiencing it right now because my breakfast was a little bit salty. Without it, we actually can have dry mouth. We can make less of the less saliva. And the saliva is where we start to break down nutrients. And it's also where our receptor sites are for hormones like GLP-1 that signal our body to tell us to be full. So we want to be very focused on, again, optimizing hydration, which means that we have water where we want it to be. I'll give you one that you and I were talking about this just before, and I think this goes under communicated and is so important for anyone focused on their bone health at every age, but certainly as we're aging, let's call it past 40, on that part, and that is blood sugar. So one of the really interesting things is that when you have high blood sugar, meaning there's an elevated presence of sugar in the bloodstream, could be for a variety of reasons. You took something in, it was easily absorbed, it goes right to the bloodstream, and insulin didn't have a chance to catch up. Or your insulin or even your GLP-1 and GIP are slow to tell insulin to go to work, and there's a whole systemic thing there that's leaving you with elevated blood sugar. Could also be that you're stressed out, and when we're stressed out, we tend to have higher blood sugar. When you have higher amounts of sugar in your bloodstream, the cells actually push water and electrolytes out of the cells into the bloodstream. And they do that, they dehydrate you because the risk of having a stickiness back up in the bloodstream is more significant than metabolic slowdown that would happen with reducing that water. So one of the things that can happen for us is that we can become dehydrated because we have elevated blood sugar. And you can see now here the whole what I call weight health ecosystem at play, which is that's going to negatively impact our bone health, but of course it's going to negatively impact our cardiovascular health and even our cognitive health, as well. So when I talk about hydration, some of the things I'm also going to be screening for are not just an A1C, your hemoglobin A1C. That's an okay marker for us to use. It's a 90-day average, though. It doesn't tell me what points in the day are you experiencing high blood sugar and why. And so I will use a continuous glucose monitor for that, where I can see, I actually go in and look at what somebody is doing. I have them track their choices. Like, are you stressed? What is your exercise? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What medications are you taking? Things like that. And we can actually see where you have higher blood sugar. And I'm going to know that those are key points to be concerned about your hydration. So it all comes together around our bone. Yeah.
Wow, I wanna talk about the blood sugar, but prior to that, I just wanna say a few because I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
I've probably worn a continuous glucose monitor like 5 times. It is probably one of the best devices ever. I have a
So
son with type
insightful.
1
Yeah.
has type 1 diabetes, so I've been very familiar, for a long time about it. But using it on just to figure out what's going on and to
Yeah.
optimize your blood sugar when you start getting close to prediabetes. We'll talk about that in a minute. Hey, Margie here. As a physical therapist, I know firsthand how important exercise is for our bones, overall health, and happiness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion on what exercises are safe and effective for people with osteoporosis. That's why I created this handout that contains a 30-minute video where I explain the concepts so you understand the do's and don'ts when it comes to exercise. And this is important because this way you can go into any class and know what you should be doing and what you should avoid. Because too many people are doing exercises that actually increase their risk of spinal fractures. I also included videos of me demonstrating effective balance, posture, and weight-bearing exercises you can put into your day right away. So all you need to do to access this handout, it's free, is go to tinyurl.com/osteoporosis exercises. So it's tinyurl.com /osteoporosis exercises, or you can click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. I just wanted to say a few things about digestion. Well, this is fascinating, though. I really never put the hydration with the blood sugar. That's a very interesting concept. But so a few things that you said about the hydration.
Yeah.
Also, you earlier said chewing, relax, stress before you eat. So this is something we can all do, and it does make a big difference. You just want to share because those are some easy things. There's a lot of things to deal with, but those are some easy things that in our society, people are shoving them. And I was one of them, as a physical therapist, you only had X amount of time to get to the next patient. So you'd shove in the food as fast as you physically could. Next patient, obviously that's the worst way if you're trying to increase absorption. So why don't you share a few of the things people can do that are really easy that we don't even.
Yeah, totally. And at 50 for me, so I'm 52 now, at 50 for me, I actually realized I was still that person in a variety of different ways. You're moving quickly, things are happening. But one of the ones that was really interesting to me was I was having my espresso as the first thing in the morning, and I would have it before I eat. Well, I was all caffeinated when I went to eat, and I flipped it. I flipped it for a couple of reasons. One, I did not want to have that first on my system. I mean, I always had water and other stuff, et cetera, but I actually lean into waiting a little bit and letting my hormones pick up, and just kind of catch up. I walk the dog and then I have my espresso. But in eating first, it was actually easier for me to slow down. I didn't realize that I was like caffeinated eating, right? And so there are some of these things that we don't really think about. There's also, for some of us, eating was not a pleasurable experience, like maybe out with others or at the family table, or other things. But when we do, and I hesitate to use the word mindful because I can be very aware and mindful, but it doesn't align for me. So what I have you do instead is actually go through the practice of, with the first bites of or sips that you're taking, I want you to rank them on a scale of 1 to 10. And I want to know, are they at least a 7 or greater in terms of delicious to you? Here's the reason I'm doing that. When it's delicious to you, you are more likely to be satisfied with it, with what you're having, and not go looking for something else. So it helps us with quantity. It helps us with the amounts that we're eating. It also means when it's delicious that your hormones are getting the signal that you're getting something. But doing the assessment of deliciousness actually slows us down. So it's my way of helping people. Like, I had to gamify it, because if somebody just tells me to be mindful, I'm like, one more thing on my list, that kind of thing. So there are some things that we can do. We can try to not be distracted eaters. We can try to not be eating while we're driving. We can try to not be on our phones or in front of our, devices or whatever while we're eating. And maybe we only do that for the first 5 or 10 minutes. Like, I understand everybody's, kind of, that we don't live in these like optimal or ideal worlds unless, at certain times in our lives we can create them. But I think that's really important. The second thing is to remember that everything that goes on in your mouth is the first most intentional phase of breakdown. And so, yes, there are other things that we can add. We can add digestive enzymes. We can support, stomach acid, like all the things that we were talking about. But the reason that we have mouths with teeth is to actually do that breakdown and to be able to do that and be intentional. The third one is we can use tools in the kitchen. If we can't and we don't have time for doing that, things like using a blender and making it into a smoothie, but then slowly sipping, or making it into a bowl that we have to spoon so that we're not sipping too quickly. I find a lot of my patients do better with smoothie bowls than with drinking smoothies, as an example, because it's too easy to drink really quickly. And the fourth one I'm going to go to the end of the meal on is all of us should be active for at least 7 minutes after we're eating. So that is like it there. And I chose 7 because if I say 5, everyone has this idea that, oh, that's about 5 minutes, and they get in like 1 or 2. And when I say 10, somebody feels like I don't have time for 10 minutes. So 7, you'll remember 7, and 7 sounds doable. 7 minutes. Move your body. Even if you can't get up and go somewhere, say you're on an airplane, move your wrists, move your ankles, do in-seat, chair twists, like whatever it is, but get moving. And that's also going to be able to help digestion. And it's also going to help us with how our body uses what we're getting in.
Oh, these are great. There was something called the soleus where you just like keep your knees bent and you just go up and down on your feet. Up and
Yeah.
down. That was such
Yes.
an easy thing, but it can work. Okay,
Yes.
so let's go back because I think that's so important with the digestion and
Yeah.
all those pieces that we can all do. And I was there. I was the
Yeah.
worst eating in the car. I was, and now I've prioritized that and it's
Yeah.
so much more enjoyable. And I know
It
I'm
is.
doing so much better with digesting my food. And it's so important because how ridiculous to waste and to be stressed too. So just
Right.
relaxing and the different things you said are so good. All right, let's get back to blood sugar because this is
Mhm.
so important when people realize, the problem is this, Ashley. I know you've come across this so much, is
Yeah.
that in our society, unless you, first of all, a lot of times they don't even test fasting insulin,
Right.
or they may be
Right.
missing, they may just do A1C and your blood sugar in terms of
Yeah.
value. But what happens so often is that unless you have diabetes, they like wait, like they don't really say
Yeah.
anything. Okay, you're okay. And then
Right.
with
Right.
diabetes, then we have to do all sorts of things. Where
Right.
when they've shown in the research A1C of 5.7 or higher can have a 24% increased risk of fractures. That's huge.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people don't realize that this blood sugar is just something that and I see this so commonly, when I see people's blood work, like, yeah, it's elevated. Oh, they're not worried about that. It's fine. No, no, it's not okay. But
Right.
this
Let's watch this. Let's watch it. I'm like, I'm sorry. Come back in a year. Let's watch this. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm so there with you. Not on the backwards doctor end. You won't hear the let's watch this. I want to understand it. It's a signal.
exactly. It's like, and it's so important. And there's such a huge relationship with bone health. So it's one of the areas that we
Yeah.
really can intervene. And also, even a lot of people don't realize when they wake up at night,
Yeah.
that's blood sugar regulation too.
Hmm.
Tell
Hmm.
us how you do this because you offer something to people. So as I said, I started wearing, my A1C one time was 5.7. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going on the continuous glucose monitor. And it was so crazy what was elevating it for me. Fruit, not
Mhm.
mixing it with fiber or nuts or things. Fruit was a big thing. Can you imagine?
Unprotected carbs is what I call them, my friend. Yes. Yeah.
And the order, I
Yeah.
read all the studies that the order matters so much if you have carbs last, but it really did change the spike. But the craziest, I meditate every day. The meditation so lowered it. It was just
Yes.
so amazing because you're wearing it
Yeah.
see in real time.
Yeah.
Wow, people underplay the stress piece, but wow, that's
One of the biggest ones I see like most frequently, and stress about things over which you have control. So high intensity. So I work with a lot of performers, like entertainers and pro athletes, and they have a very difficult time having their blood sugar in range, especially in season, because they may go from a game, like an intense practice, to a game, to a flight, to a I'm trying to deal with my family, like and be show up there, whatever. And it's this stress, 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 stress. And so a lot of what we do in the recovery space is nutrition and lifestyle intervention, what you're talking about there with breathing and other things, to what we call optimized recovery. But part of that is to recover your blood sugar to a better space, because we also don't want highs and lows. Like that's not advantageous, either on that part. So we measure that when we do a weight health optimization plan, we measure that. So first of all, you come in, you're like, yep, sign me up. And we look at all of your existing data. I'm not sending you out the door right away to get other data unless like we do have the option to add on labs and CGMs and things like that. If you're like, I want this data as well. And by the way, if anyone's like even curious, we do free sessions to go through what your weight health plan will look like. So you can just sign up for one of those. It's 15 minutes. But I believe in human to human, at this point. So when we do that, what I want to do is I want to do the continuous glucose monitor with you. And I'm very clear about when is going to be that 2-week window that's going to be optimal. If you have significant digestive issues, or even if they don't feel significant, but we identify them, we're not going to start with your glucose monitor for all the gut reasons we just talked about. Likewise, if you're just about to enter, I had this guy that was like, I'm going to wear my CGM. Okay, I got it. I got it. Oh, Ashley. And I was like, what are you doing? You're an accountant. It's March. We're not doing your CGM. Like, I was like, I'm trying to have you just get my taxes done. Like, I was like, no, we're not, we're not doing that. Pre-April was horrible for him. So we want to be strategic about when we're using this and capturing that data. For a woman, we want to know where you are on your cycle. Now, sometimes for women, I might do 2 CGMs, a back-to-back, so that I get 28 days and I can actually see the impact of your cycle if you're still menstruating. So we want to be intentional about that. And I strongly believe, as your backwards doctor, that it is really important to have someone like myself be able to evaluate your data. I know there's all sorts of AI out there. I know there are all these programs. Many of them just keep coming back to the same thesis that it's your food. And I want to share an interesting statistic with you about how your body operates. There are 40 plus, at least 40 factors that impact your blood sugar. 10 of them are nutrition. 3 of them are carbohydrate related. And there's no food in nature that is just a carbohydrate or just a protein. They all have aminos and fiber, and they also have fats in them. So we have, like, yes, the order does matter, but we also want to make sure that we're not like saying to someone, eat protein first. What we're really talking about there is, oh, you're going to get your protein and your fats over here, or maybe your protein source are lentils. It's going to have fiber and carbohydrates. So we really have to get specific about decoding you personally with using a CGM. And I think it's a waste of money to do it if you don't have that intel, that you're, or somebody who can sort of assess it through that lens on that part.
Yeah, and the interesting to me is, again, it's not a one size fits all. So my husband and I, the first time, did it at the same time, and my foods that were elevating my blood sugar weren't necessarily elevating his. So it's
Right.
so
Hmm.
individualized. But once you learn, you don't have to wear it forever. Once you
Right.
learn, it is life change. I just think that device is amazing. Or
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know, you go to a certain restaurant, you have their salad dressing, not realizing it is totally packed with sugar. It's just,
Yeah.
it's real.
Or you could also be wearing it. I mean, and so I similarly, my nephew's type 1 diabetic, so I'm very intimate with using these. But one of the things that we see is, like, we see what you could be sick, you could be under the weather. It could help me understand to not have your training protocol be the same thing, or you could be fighting an infection, and we see that with white blood cells and with your CRP or whatever. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we interpret the data correctly, and we don't just go, hey, let's trade your banana for cauliflower every time, right? And I think that's the important thing, because we really turn people into being afraid of foods or feeling like their favorite foods. I had somebody who was like crying to me, and she's like, I just love dates. Like, the part of the world that she's from, like, that's her, like, and I was like, wait a second. You're so much like, we grew up on Fruit Loops. You grew up on dates. Like, have a date. Like, let's do this. Let's just do it in a way that's better for your blood sugar. And we actually, have pivoted to where she doesn't have that in the evening, but she has it during the day. She's like you. She's figured out what she has first. She knows how many she can have. And then we got in with the 7 minutes of walking. I had somebody in my, I share his information in my book, but in 14 days, he went from a completely out of range blood sugar to a totally optimal blood sugar. And his doctors were just about to put him on medication. And it was just like, wait a second. And, one doctor had been telling him to have 2 bananas a day for his potassium. By the way, that's like nowhere near enough potassium. I just want to be clear. And we can't meet our potassium needs with bananas. But so he was eating a banana, and he was smartly eating the banana when he went walking. But he was having 2 bananas, right? And so when you're doing that, you're like, okay, this is too much. And here's my blood sugar. So we changed it, and we had him have half before and half after. And the half after was in his smoothie with something else. And then we leaned into all these other potassium, choices. But it's like, let's just not make the food the answer or the problem, in that part. We want to really help guide you towards that's what personalized nutrition is, giving your bones and your body what it needs to run better.
Yeah, and what's so exciting to me is that we have control. This is an area we can, right? Must see this every single day. You can completely transform someone's life. I mean, I'm sure you do that all the time, but it's
Yeah. I want to acknowledge, I know you would too in this space. I just don't think it gets said enough. But I want to acknowledge that choice, that's our privilege, right? So if I'm talking to someone, if somebody's listening and they're like, because right now food is expensive. And sometimes right now we just don't have available things. Like I remember there was, no avocado for a time period, and everyone's like, what do we put on toast? And I was like, remember almond butter? Like it's like, okay. But I just want to make sure that you don't feel like it again, this comes back from an access standpoint. And if you have limited choices because of your health, your digestion, what you tolerate, anything else like that, we still can use food to optimally resource your body. Or where we can't, that's where we lean in and we create that total nutrition matrix so that your bone has the resources that it needs, but also so that you are like the rest of your body, is getting what it needs to run better as well.
So for people who want to do this blood sugar, is that
Yeah.
part that's not separate then? You said
No,
it's
it's part of it. It's just a timing question. Some people add it on and we do it right at the beginning, or they add it on and we have our first session where we get together and we go over we get to know you, we put your plan together, and then I'll say like, wait, you're about to go on spring break. Please don't put that on. Or, oh, you're having this, test done. Don't put this on. And we pick the time together for when you put that on there. Yeah. And they can use your code and they get a discount on all of it. So that's great.
tell people we'll have it in the show notes, but why don't you tell people what's the link, where they
Sure. Yeah. So you're
uh,
going to go to the betternutritionprogram.com. It's like there's like a get started or like get my plan, whatever page you land on. There might be different calls to action, but there's that. You can also go over into the area where it says demo or free consult, like where you sign up and be able to do that if you're not ready to make an investment. Totally understand that. And then what we've done for anyone listening is we've just made it really easy, Margie 20. So we have a code for you for 20% off.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's so important because, as you say, doctors, my whole family are physicians.
Me
However,
too.
they're
Yeah.
wonderful, but they don't learn this, right? How much
Right.
nutrition do they get? So it's such a missing piece. And
And I do want to double click on that because I am excited about the awareness that it would be great, but keep in mind that like I didn't study to become a doctor. I studied to become the backwards doctor. So even if you like, as an example, I happen to know a lot about colonoscopies. Like I know about the machines, I know about how they work, like I've been in the room for them, like all of this stuff. I don't do your colonoscopy because I don't practice doing colonoscopies. You do not want me doing yours. And so with doctors, even if they have the knowledge, just like if any of you listening have the knowledge about nutrition, if you don't practice building and refining and optimizing personalized plans, you're not going to do what it is I'm talking about doing here. So that's really where the backwards doctor, the dietitian, or the CNS, or maybe a doctor who practices personalizing nutrition, but that's at least one session in and of itself. It is not a eat this, not that. It's not I read your labs and I assigned these supplements, which I see too often right now in the name of longevity. And that's not actually what drives longevity. Longevity is when our body consistently has what it needs to run better and it can use it. And that's where you need somebody who's coming in and looking at your total nutrition and your body, how your body uses it, and all of that stuff together.
yeah, that's great. So just mention, since a lot of the people listening are postmenopausal,
Yeah.
you want to just share a little bit like what happens after you talked about reduced stomach acid, but are there any other things we need to know about that menopause itself causes that we need to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, when estrogen doesn't show up anymore at all, or when we have, decreased amounts of testosterone and progesterone, we're very aware that a resource in the bone and in the gut bone, because you also have estrogen receptors in the gut, that we're missing a piece there. So that sometimes is that argument for hormone replacement therapy. And that's a very personalized decision. It also is an indication, and we'll talk for a second about this. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's directly there because what I experience with a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women is they get, rightfully so, are aware of weight gain, and in particular, weight now accumulating around the belly. And when that happens, it becomes I should eat less. It's diet and exercise. I should eat less, strength train more, or take in more protein. And that's not the approach to weight health that we want to pursue. What we want to pursue is tracking, first of all, not a total weight number. I love if you're actually paying attention to how your clothes fit, but I prefer if we actually have data from a scale, pounds of fat, pounds of muscle, obviously tracking our bone and also seeing our water composition. And one of the things that we'll identify there is with the changes to your gut that happen when your hormones shift, one of the changes that can happen there is you can see a reduction in two key hormones, GLP-1 and GIP. Now, let's understand why those are so important. Those are weight health hormones, and they tell insulin to go to work. So they're part of your blood sugar conversation we were just talking about. They also, GLP-1 has receptor sites in your artery, the linings of your artery, your endothelial tissue. So they're part of your blood flow and part of your arterial health, your heart health. And of course, as we now know from the medication standpoint, they're also activating hormones in your brain, your leptin, which tells you to feel full. But I think what many people don't know, and this is why I tie it to the menopausal time period, it is they also are involved in bone building and being anti-bone resorption, which is the bone breakdown. So GIP is found in your osteoblasts. So those are your bone builders. So there are receptor sites there for that hormone. And GLP-1 is involved in the osteoclasts and anti-resorption and also reducing inflammation, which we know to be key for making sure that we have healthy bones. So one of the things that happens with the shift in menopause is not just a sex hormone game, it's also a weight health hormone gain. And that's why I really pay attention. It's one of the primary reasons I wrote this book is that no matter what, if you ever have a fat related issue, if you're trying to get rid of belly fat, if you're trying to get rid of visceral fat, any of that stuff, but if you don't, and in fact, if you're trying to keep fat on, or you're feeling like, oh, I'm trying to, maintain muscle, any of that, your bone health is actually really implicated and involved in, or I should say, your weight health hormones are implicated and involved in your bone health. So it's really important that we follow the process that I've laid out for you in my book about optimizing your gut and your total nutrition to make sure that these hormones are working successfully. And I'll say a final thing. One of the things that's really interesting is we see that the same probiotics and fibers that then become short chain fatty acids, we now see in research that they are implicated also in bone building, right? Not just being anti-resorption, but bone building. So this gut bone axis, I mean, I'm just obsessed with our being able to have a conversation like this today, really does have us making sure that we understand GLP-1 and GIP a little bit better. Yeah,
No, it's so important, and the research is there. We're not
it's
making it
there.
up. Like, more research keeps coming out, and it's just so exciting. You've done so much research with the GLP-1s and people on the medications. Do you just wanna share a little bit before we end about that? Because there's so much controversy and,
Yeah.
people are so there are implications for bone, but people
Yeah.
people just are confused about this. So you wanna, like, set us straight with everything?
Sure. And I'll do this is a short bit. There's a lot more for us to think about. But one of the things that frustrates me is that these medications, so first of all, they're different types. So there's GLP-1 alone, semaglutide, there's GLP-1 and GIP, which is tirzepatide. There's retatrutide now, which is GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. So it's 3 hormones in there. And then there are some that are non-peptide, and those are working differently. So when we look at those, it may be somebody might do better with, say, tirzepatide or retatrutide if they're looking to support bone building. But here's where the rubber meets the road. And the research is being presented, in my opinion, in a very missing the mark way. They're saying that these medications, those researchers are saying that medications are creating bone loss. I just told you those hormones actually help promote bone building. So in the right amounts and in a body where you're not losing bone or muscle, but you're only losing fat, and you're losing fat in an appropriate place, or maybe you're not trying to lose fat at all and you're using it to optimize your blood sugar, and you're eating and you're nourishing, you've got all of those nutrients going in, and your gut is optimally operating, the medication should be helping you to build bone. And that's what we've also seen in research. So when a medication, and it's not just GLP-1s, it's SSRIs, it's proton pump inhibitors, it's oral contraceptives, it's corticosteroids, it's what am I missing? Antibiotics, et cetera. So all of these medications come in and are impacting gut health, and as a result, they're impacting bone health. We really have to pay attention to that. So the key thing here is to understand how any medication you're taking is impacting your bone health. But can you be successful with bone building and or bone maintenance on a GLP-1 agonist? Absolutely. You just have to use the medication in the way that's right for your body, which means probably a lower dose, and also probably means leaning into understanding how it's impacting your gut health, because that's the way that it works. And we want to, if there's any underlying pre-existing gut issues, those are going to get worse. So again, the backwards are doctor is here, on that part to say that this assessment is really going to drive you to what those optimal outcomes are for whether you're what I wrote on my book, GLP-1 shot or not, from a bone health standpoint.
Yeah, I just think it's so important because so often people think, it's a quick fix. That's really
Right.
what, and it's not. Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing also the other anti-inflammatory and what people can have been able to achieve is incredible
Right.
when done properly, under
Mhm.
supervision, making sure, just like you said, but that was a beautiful way to say it. Well, we could go on and on, Ashley. I love all
I know, Margie. We'll have to do a part two. Yeah, totally.
do a part 2.
Yeah,
I think you'll have to come to my community also and do a class because this is
you got it. Yeah. I just follow Margie wherever she goes in the world. So that's what happens. Yes.
So tell everyone again. So it's the website. Where else can people the
Yep,
book?
the Better Nutrition Program. You can pretty much, you should be able to find your best shot everywhere where books are, including libraries, so you don't have to pay for it. There is a QR code in there that gives you free access to our HIPAA compliant community. That's important because you can ask personal questions there. And then I'm anywhere that you find the Better Nutrition Program or by my name. And a lot of my like deep dive work I write about on Substack. So I lean into writing there, as well as obviously in my book on that part. And I would just love to connect with anyone who has any questions, and certainly know what questions came up for you out of today's conversation.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
so
you.
enlightening, and I think it's so empowering for all of us.
Good.
There's so much we can do when we dive a little deeper and answer these questions and then add it into our plan. So thanks so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Wow, Ashley is just a wealth of knowledge, and I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did, and now have some new things that you can put into your life that I know are going to make a difference. I was so impressed with Ashley and her personalized nutrition plan that I invited her to come to my class in July. So she's going to do a program with the community and on personalized nutrition plan, does some even expands upon what she talked about today, and there'll be time for question and answer. So I'll have that link in the show notes, as well as the link for her free consult. And make sure if you something you are interested in, use the coupon code Margie20 for a 20% discount. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.